Hi, welcome to the On Purpose podcast. We are in the Kingdom Indicators series, and this is episode 4. So, I wanted to deep dive today on the essence of awareness and what that
Mm,
means to you.
Gosh, awareness. Okay. Uh, it's funny. I was just having an experience with that this morning at our morning meeting. I was observing somebody not being aware of something. It was something silly, like how we have the chairs set up so you can move in and out the circle. So I was noticing is that two people were just like unaware. And I noticed myself having a reaction to it, and I was like taking responsibility for my reaction. And then still kept noticing, their lack of awareness. And then I remember this one of the persons is very aware and often talks about lack of awareness. So I was just like mulling through the person who's often the aware one and definitely talks about awareness is completely unaware of, this little thing that I'm aware of. And then, how much of it is my thing and, whatever. So it was just interesting that you brought that today. That whole show just showed up for me. A little movie just showed up for me when you said things. But what that story actually points to is I don't, well, sorry, I'm saying I don't believe like I'm trying to be humble, but really I relate to it like I know this to be true. There's no perfect awareness. There's no I'm aware. What are you aware of? Everything. No. I've been working on myself for 20 years. I'm aware of everything. No. I'm very sensitive. Like I am often aware of multiple persons in the room and how they're feeling and a little movement here. Like I'm just sort of probably as a function of my childhood. And so I'm often the person who's aware of a lot more of what's going on around us than other people. And I miss stuff all the time. Like it's uncomfortable how much I miss. Like I'll hear in a conversation several days later after an event, da, 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 like, oh, wait, is that what they said? And everybody goes, yeah, that's what they said. They're like, oh, where was I? So I think one thing about awareness is it's very difficult to assess one's own awareness. Possibly, maybe impossible, because you would have to be aware of what you're not aware of to actually have an accurate assessment of your level of awareness. And so there's the catch 22. If you're not aware of what you're not aware of. You're only aware of what you want. Oh yeah. Oh, this is really good. So, here's a conversation. Wow, I don't think we've ever had here. There's what you know. So if you were to draw a circle, and I said, you know, if this circle represented everything that was known in the universe, how much do you think you know? Most people are humble enough to create like a little slice. Every now and then somebody does like 10 or 20% of the pie, but all knowledge of the universe, like how much do you know? And people do a little slice, right? Okay, fine. More accurate representation might be like a dot, rather than a slice, but that's fine. So a little slice, 1%. Let's say somebody takes a 1% slice out of the pie of all of knowledge, right? So perfect, 1% ish. Cool. So that's what you know that you know. I know how to play drums. I know how to lead a leadership course. I know how to coach. I know how to speak English. I used to know how to run marathons, whatever. So I know something about paint, so whatever. So there's a whole cluster of things that I know about. Now, what do I know that I don't know? Oh, snap. Well, I don't speak Chinese. I don't play the guitar. I don't know judo. uh, you know, I don't know scuba diving, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole cluster of things that I know that I know, and a whole cluster of things that I know that I don't know. So how much of that slice, how much of that pie do are things that you know that you don't know? So usually it's about the same slice as the other slice, little tiny sliver. more accurate would be like a little dot, but nonetheless. Cool. Well, where transformation happens is what you don't know that you don't know. And that's almost everything. For example, when I went to my first transformational weekend, right, um, I knew that I had a lot of resentment and judgment about my childhood and about my mother. Right? So I knew that. What did I know that I didn't know? Well, I didn't know what it would be like to have a different kind of childhood or different experiences or something like that. But what happened is what I didn't know that I didn't know is there was an opportunity for me to forgive, an opportunity for me to appreciate, an opportunity for me to actually, call my mother and apologize for judging her because obviously she did the best that she could with what she had. Her story possibly was worse than mine. So she brought the best that she knew how, given who she was and what she knew and what her experience was. And in fact, many of the things that I most appreciated about myself literally came from her. She's artistic and smart and witty and personable and whatever. Maybe not everybody thinks I'm personable, but I can be. So anyway, if I really look, I can see that many of the things that I really appreciate about myself literally came from her. Additionally, what I have become in the world needed the foundation that I had, as unpleasant as it might have been. That foundation is actually key and core to who I am today. And so, really, there's, you know, what there is to say is, thank you. I apologize. I appreciate you. Thanks for getting me to the age. Say thanks for feeding me and housing me until I could do that for myself. You know. And so I didn't know that all that was possible and important. Right. So where growth happens, where awakening happens, where transformation happens is in the area of what you don't know that you don't know. Fortunately, that's almost everything. So there's really a big opportunity to Sarah's left us probably because of the internet for a minute, so I'll just keep going. So fortunately, the space of what you don't know that you don't know is infinite, and so are the opportunities for growth and transformation. So in awareness, I think one thing that's important about awareness is humility, because where you might be more aware than everybody around you and all the things, you know, you've been committedly developing yourself in awareness for many years. And you have evidence for being aware, way more than the people in your circle, your peers and whatever. And even then, your awareness is paltry, almost non-existent, related to what it would be possible to be aware of. So I think the first thing is humility. I'll pause the recording here, so it might be a little choppy, and I'm going to say I'll be right back, but it won't feel like I'll be right back. It'll just be like a little click. I'll see you in a minute. We're back, just like I said. See, Sarah disappeared, and Sarah's back. Sarah, how did you do that?
It just said I needed to be restarted. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Shout out for Windows
Window
updates.
updates. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks, Bill. So back to awareness and how basically aware that we're not. Back to you.
Yes. So, I guess this would be a really good question right now is how do you know when you are discerning versus judging?
Oh, goodness. Discerning versus judging. Yeah. So, in the most basic terms, discerning is, oh, that car is red. You're discerning that it's red. It's not blue. It's not pink. It's not, some other color. Judgment is, ooh, that car's red, with the opinion that it should be blue or pink or whatever, right? So discernment is distinguishing the difference of something versus something else, or distinguishing the truth of something. It's and judgment is um, having yourself be the judge, the arbiter of the way things should be. You know, you could make the argument that everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be, because if it wasn't, it would be some other way. But you know, we human beings naturally reserve the right to, you know, stand in the way of billions of years of history. You know, there was the Big Bang, and then there's light and dust and dirt, and then there's stars, and then there's planets, and then there's, you know, planets are dead for billions of years, and then they come to life. Well, our planet, then it comes to life, and it evolves, and there's all these different cycles of life, reptiles, mammals, and finally we show up, and everything. You know, then your great grandparents, and you know, your grandparents and your parents all had to meet and do the thing, and finally we're here, and everything in our lives, and then finally to this very moment, like everything happened to have this very moment be possible, and we're standing there going, shit, it should be some other way. That's judgment. It feels ridiculous when you put it that way, which is why I absolutely put it that way. But it's, you know, it's almost every moment of every person's life if they'll let themselves be aware of it. Boom, back to awareness. You're welcome. I'll be here all night.
Gosh. Well, I mean, we're humans, so we have sensitivity too, you know? So, like, and we've been kind of domesticated into judgment all of our lives, you know, like this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
And so how do we keep that sensitivity, because that is a part of our awareness, but not be so hyper vigilant and emotionally reactive?
That's a great question. I was just assisting in a meeting, the kitchen meeting, and the person who has taken responsibility for that incredibly huge feeding 40 people every day is no small matter. You know, keeping the team together, and the, you know, the ingredients coming in, and the shopping, and the processing food from the garden, and like it's actually, I'm just noticing my lack of awareness of just the sheer size and complexity of that box, right? So, um, can you ask me your question again?
Yeah, it's uh how do you keep your sensitivity without being so hyper vigilant and emotionally
Uh-huh.
reactive?
Perfect. So, um, um, so, so so the kitchen, so the person holding that space has in the past often gotten triggered because things aren't going the way she sees that they need to go to get the job done, right? And there's two things happening. One is she clearly sees that, you know, if you drink all the milk the morning before, we're not going to be able to make French toast or whatever it is, right? So there's certain ingredients, and people come in with lack of awareness of what's happening next. And, you know, that's a discernment. Okay, well, now we can't do the thing that I had planned, so we'll have to do something else, or we just won't have, you know, breakfast or whatever. Um, so that's discernment. However, getting triggered and upset, and, you know, letting yourself go to hell, letting yourself get all divided, and, rah, 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 and she's walking around in judgment, and rah, 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 that is not helping anything. That doesn't put the milk back. That doesn't train anybody. That doesn't create a new plan to make up for the breakdown. That doesn't really do anything positive. And so the sensitivity, the awareness is noticing what works and doesn't work given what you're committed to. So there's no, in this conversation, there's no good or bad, right or wrong. There's just what works and doesn't work given whatever you're committed to. So she's committed to a smoothly running kitchen that produces beautiful food for us, and, you know, people showing up and making it efficient, and whatever. And then, so the discernment is noticing what works or doesn't work given that commitment. The judgment is noticing the same thing, but making it wrong, making it bad, putting yourself as the judge of what should and shouldn't be. It's also a lack of faith, if you will, from a Christian point of view, that all things work for good for those who believe and are called according to his plan, right? So, yeah, there's a breakdown. I mean, that fool drank all the milk. This is actually a thing that happened recently. So it's why is he talking about people drinking milk? Because that's actually what happened, right? Uh, so, uh, so, how is this perfect? What occurred to me is, maybe we need to buy more milk. When I made that suggestion, it was received rather awkwardly. Maybe we're just not buying enough milk. Has anybody considered that? People need to eat, so anyway. uh, and so that's, sense I'm kind of using sensitivity and awareness as the same for a moment. So, the awareness of something isn't working as we predicted or as we planned or as we set up. Okay, that's one thing. It is or isn't going according to plan. It is or isn't going to lead us to what we're committed to. But that's distinct from the judgment of that's wrong, that's bad. I need to fix that. I need to go teach that person a lesson. I need to stand my ground and draw a harder line and make punishment or something like that, right? So inside of discernment, there's still the opportunity to be centered and peace and faith, and your highest creativity is available, and you start working out a pathway forward given whatever you're dealing with. And for myself, I'm sensitive, right? So something happens, I will often feel it, like ouch. Somebody says a thing sharply or whatever. In the past, when I feel the thing, I might react, and I might react from how I'm personally feeling, or I might react out of my commitment that we have a community that actually works and can communicate with each other, right? And that arguably is very valid. Like people don't really know that most people are not really great communicators, not really great at distinguishing and sharing what's inside of them so they can get it out and get a discourse and a community and connection with people. Generally, people are not very good at that. And that's kind of what I train people. No, that's what I train people in. But if coming from, hey, you're fucking that up, do it this way, that's coming from judgment. And so I have definitely been guilty of that, either to minimize the pain for myself or to fulfill a promise and a commitment that I am for this community, for this mission. But either way, if I'm coming from judgment, it's ineffective and almost always causes more harm than good, right? If I'm centered and in peace and in faith, all things working for good, that doesn't mean I don't interact with it, but maybe the thing is here so that I can interact with it. This is my opportunity to create a world and language for people to step into if they're feeling what I'm feeling and seeing what I'm seeing and going where I'm going. Maybe this world and language would actually be inspirational and useful for people, right? But that doesn't come from harsh judgment. That comes from, hey, I see that way of, hey, I see that you're really struggling articulating what's inside of you such that we can all support you. And then you can actually clearly see what's going on inside of you so you can be responsible for your healing or centeredness or wakefulness or whatever. And if you would like us to, we can now connect because we can now communicate about it, and we're actually looking at the same thing and that sort of thing. So um, for me, that's been quite a journey in my domestication and the way I was brought up, and well into my adult years. I was highly reactive on purpose and by design. That sounds crazy. until you hear it from the perspective of the person that I used to be, which is I was very accustomed to being in highly adverse environments. People who are not for me, people who do not have my best interest in mind, the sarcasm, the snarky, the rallying, the gossiping, the shaming, the the false accusations. Very, 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 very familiar with all of that. And children react in different ways when they hit the wall. Everybody shatters in a different flavor, and my flavor was getting really good at the counter punch, getting really good at the retort. So slowing down the thing wasn't something that I had any interest in. I wanted to be the quickest, the most deadly, the most sharp, the most sarcastic, the most able to transfer pain, the most able to punish someone for hurting me. And you know, uh, it got me where I needed to go. It was the perfect thing for where I was at and who I was and the capacities that I had. And then as children play childish games and adults, set that aside and, you know, deal with the world differently. And so, but that was a painful, difficult lesson for me because it really took a lot for me to develop myself in that way and to dismantle all of that and become someone who could receive any communication. Sometimes I don't feel pain where I would have in the past, and sometimes I do. But I can, just like if I'm walking down the street and I step on a pebble, it hurts my foot. I don't need to attack the pebble. I can literally just take the next step and go, ouch. Right. And so it is with my sensitivity. Someone could say the thing that's clearly not true and clearly delivered with venom and with an intent to hurt me. And the old me would have, I used to literally say this, if you give me one, I'm going to give you a three. And the whole thing is, if you hurt me, I'm going to transfer three times as much pain to you so that you understand that I'm the one you don't want to mess with. Go find somebody. You want to pick on somebody, go find somebody else. And that was my mentality. And I was really good at it. It was highly effective for what it was. And for the time, in my life and my journey that it was highly effective. But as I continue to grow up and mature and wake up and take on more responsibility, like responsibility for nurturing this mission forward, that's no longer effective. It's actually highly detrimental. And so now I often still feel something similar to what I used to, but I'm clear that's all belongs to me. It's not them. It's not. Now, maybe they're highly dysfunctional, and in many cases, I would discern that that's actually accurate. But it's not actually, even if it feels uncomfortable, it's not actually a threat to me. It's not actually going to hurt me. I can, I can, I can, I can bring my attention back to my faith that all things are working for good for those who believe in a call towards his plan, called according to his plan. And so that's how I personally deal with my sensitivity is simply take responsibility for what's going on inside of me and find a lesson in there to that I can grow inside of further or wake up inside of further or develop myself up further um, um, through finding a higher perspective, having a breakthrough, um, whatever. So I'll pause there. Hopefully in there it was the answer to your question also.
Yes, and vulnerability right now, just I feel
Mhm.
convicted on so many levels, and set that aside and go on to the next question.
Nice.
Just becoming aware of myself on a whole other level. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, and thank you for that.
Yeah, you're super welcome.
I really brought that in for myself. And I've noticed also, I've been recognizing in myself and in other people that you spend a certain amount of time with people, you can start to over identify with their stories rather than seeing them as a child of God. And
Yes.
how do you unmerge from that and separate that? And
I guess my relationship with my wife would be the best place to look. She's the one I'm closest to. Um, so in the past, I've used relationships to fill the void inside of me. Entertainment, connection, love sometimes, not always. Sex, adventure, whatever. But consumeristically, to fill some, to avoid some pain or fill some void inside of me. I hope most people can identify with that. If you can't identify with that, look again. Look, just right quick, look one more time. So I'm pretty sure that's what everybody. Um, and so um, with my wife today, we're in what I call a divine union, a union whose purpose is to, uh, uh, be of service and fulfilling, bringing heaven on earth. And so our relationship has a purpose, and that purpose isn't entertainment or fixing each other or comforting each other or being in a codependent conspiracy or like that's what I for sure used to do. I'm a retired people pleaser, so I would get significance by making people feel good, and I was good at that. I could a charming comment and action or whatever, and they feel good. Now I feel good. I'm a hero, and yeah, like kind of thing. And a lot of it was unconscious. But so that really has helped me to see all people this way. And another distinction that really came through is so the first that was like divine union, like what are you in this relationship for, right? And then you know, right alongside that is what I call soul friends. I think we've talked about that on the podcast before, but in the past, my relationships were body friends. The purpose of which was to make me feel better, right? And in exchange, I would make them feel better. It was a sort of giving to get kind of environment dynamic. And so I've stepped out of that some little bit ago, and so now my relationships are of a soul nature, right? So I call that soul friends. And so my wife and I are soul friends in that respect, and that's how I that's how I'm in the world connecting to people as soul friends. And so this we have about 40 people, I think, in the village, and right. So not everybody do I have like an affinity for. Not everybody. Hey, would you like to have lunch with me today? Like that wouldn't be a pull for me. But we are family, and we are together to fulfill this deeper mission, this deeper covenant, this deeper commitment, this covenant. And so whatever I'm projecting on people, she's selfish, you know, she's difficult, he's disconnected, whatever. Um, that may be true or not true. It might be my filter, or it might be my discernment. But in either way, I'm here to be connected with people as soul friends, right? In this fill this deeper covenant. And so my personal preferences or experience have now dropped in importance to almost zero, right? And now I'm here to be a space in which people can heal, which is really becoming a big focus here in our community. Be a space where people can, grow up, I would say that most adults are actually little children in adult bodies. That might be a whole purpose. If I haven't, if I haven't lost your entire audience at this point, maybe we'll talk about that another time. And people are quite asleep. So what do you mean children are asleep? Or well, I mean, we've been domesticated and poked and prodded and beat and threatened and abused and lied about and all the things. I'm sure everybody can identify with that, all in a specific direction to get you to conform. Say what you're supposed to say. Don't say when you don't talk when you're not wanted, and feel what you're supposed to feel, and actually don't feel anything. Just shut up about your feelings. And, answer this when you get this question, answer it correctly, and if you don't, the consequences are often very dire. Like big time consequences. Um, so I seek to see people and relate to people as their soul journeys, I guess, and be discerning and gentle to the caged little girl, little boy that's in most people, that we packed and stacked all of our pain and drama and hardened our hearts. I'm certainly super duper guilty of that. And so I can, when I'm allowing myself to be aware and present, I can relate to people as that. And I can see the little child in there that's still in a cage that's, causing all this mischief and rebelling and trying to get out and pissed off and, afraid and hurt. And, or I can see the person still waking up. They've been in a slumber their whole lives. People have been putting them to sleep, and people have been coping out and numbing out and entertaining out and, porning out and eating out, and, so that we don't have to feel and see and all this stuff. So I can see people, I can also relate to people who are like, half awake and, half asleep. And, I'll take naps every now and then. Sometimes my wife will wake me up in the middle of a nap, and it takes me, 10, 15 minutes sometimes to get my body working again. And she knows to just, she'll ask me a simple question like, is this, do you want to, I'll just like sit there motionless and speechless like for a minute before I can answer, because that's just where I'm at that moment. So she's learned to just like give me space, like, okay, I see that you're waking up. I'll come back in 5 minutes, and then I'm all back, and everything's working. And I can speak and hear that kind of stuff. So in the same way, I can see that people are waking up, and they're in that sort of groggy, not catching everything, not really able to articulate kind of space. And I can see people who I can see the thwarted childhood in people. They've been hurt and told to shut up, and they've disconnected themselves from themselves and packed and stacked all the pain. And, so there's healing as I see it, there's waking as I see it. Well, there's growing up as I see it, and there's waking up as I see it. So that, that healing is just, you know, medical attention, in the sense, transformational or spiritual medical attention to that little child that's been locked. If you ran across a child and been locked up in a cage for 10 years, perhaps your first concern might be their health, you know? And so it is with me here. And then you'll notice that due to poor health and poor conditions, they never really grew up. It's not a functional not a functional adult yet. They need care and special attention. They're not ready to overflow their power and abundance and capacity and ability into others. They're just not grown up yet. That's an adult. Children need to be taken care of. Adults can take care of others. And so that's just not where they're at yet. And then there's, healed up and grown up. Then there's like wake up, like, oh, I might actually like to be of service to others. I might actually like to have a covenant and actually live a life worth living. I might like to have a purpose would be worth getting my heart broken for over and over and over and over again. Like, wow. And that may not be for everybody, but that's like really grown up adult. Like, hey, I'm going to take responsibility for my experience. And I'm going to tell the truth and my shit. And I'm going to develop myself so I can overflow into humanity and actually be a, be a resource, And so, uh, you know, uh, um, I it, I'm not for sure not perfect at it, but I've been developing myself in seeing that in people rather than judging them for the often incredibly crazy, destructive, detrimental practices and words and people throwing tantrums and lying and not taking responsibility for anything and just bumbling around, being unaware, crashing into stuff, either physically or emotionally or psychologically, you know, in the past, I've been quite impatient and harsh with people from time to time for that sort of thing. And that could happen again for me, I suppose. But looking at it a whole different way and, connecting with the wounded child and connected with the youth and innocence of someone who hasn't really had an opportunity to grow up and connected to the sleepfulness and the grogginess of someone actually trying to wake up. I can't remember the question, but that was a hell of an answer.
Yeah, it was. It was. The question was how do you don't get wrapped up in the
Oh,
stories and the
perfect. Okay,
identities
yeah.
of someone
Yeah,
who
perfect.
even without God. So it was perfect distinguishing.
Awesome.
Oh man. And then I guess here's the opposite, and it's how do you walk in awareness of someone's anointing, I guess, or yeah, their anointing and not be intimidated or even idolize them, like placing them above you.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Um, one, um, so I see two parallel tracks. One is observing someone in that way, and the other is my relationship to myself in that thing. So the first is like you know them by their fruits, right? So the people I look up to, or the people I respect, or the people I appreciate the most, I guess, are people who have over time taken responsibility and to wake up and heal and grow up and develop themselves as a resource, and they do so open-heartedly and joyfully because it's a privilege to be a resource. It's not until it is. It looks like a lot of work for not very much until you really get just the blessing that it is to live a life actually being a contribution and being a resource for people. And so I can see that in others, and I really appreciate that. So I have an affinity for that, you know. And I don't look up to anybody really because I see myself as someone who I see that in myself. I see that I've, you know, uh, for many years um, have had great attention on waking up and growing up and healing up such that I could be a reliable and impactful resource for people and humanity in this mission. And, so I appreciate that about myself. I'm really happy that I said yes for so many years over and over again to the next. Holy smokes, that's the next thing. Ouch. Okay, yes. Then, holy smokes, that was, oh my God, I want to do that. I'm scared. Okay, I'll do it. So by blessing or grace or, whatever, I have said yes repeatedly, and the fruit of that is I get to experience the life that I get to experience, which is really beautiful and abundant and um, far exceeds anything, exponentially exceeds anything that I ever thought would be possible for me. Can I have the question again?
Yeah, it's how do you walk in the awareness of someone's anointing and not
Yes.
idolize them or be intimidated.
yeah, so I can appreciate that in others, and I can appreciate that in myself, and I hold myself as a peer, and in the full knowledge that when resource connects with resource, let's call it for you know, I respect and appreciate that in others. I respect and appreciate that in myself, and now I'm open to receiving and giving with no attachment to either one. John is someone I hold in this light, and so I'm working on a project that I thought he could give me counsel on. And so it's not like, hey, buddy, can you take a minute? It's like, hey, you got a minute? He goes, yeah. Lay my thing on him, and he goes, "Rah, rah, 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 rah," and then we get into a deep conversation. But neither one of us is over or under the other. There's this mutual respect. We've been on this journey together. We've both contributed wildly to this mission. We have very different flavors and different things, and that's all part of the perfection of it. There's no competition. There's no shame. Just appreciation and I would say gratitude for each other, and that kind of. So I'm moved by this. So as this is another aspect of my life I never thought I would get to experience is being part of such a beautiful community. Like this is um, really just the people that I get to interact with, the environment that I get to interact with them in is just so incredible. And um, yeah, so I can appreciate the strength and power and resource and anyone who's in that space as I can appreciate that in myself.
Yeah. It's not an easy journey to walk on, but it is so worth it.
Yeah, it was really scary for me to appreciate myself for a long time. And I don't mean braggadocious. I mean just like, wow, I really went through something to get here. I've been through a lot to be the person that I am. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I didn't wuss out, 25 years ago or 20 years ago or 15. And there were plenty of, at any junction, at any well, there were plenty of reasons to like, F y'all, I'm out. Um, and I didn't do that, or I didn't do that for any length of time. I mostly didn't do that at all. And then the times that I did say no to something, it was to make way for the next thing.
I'm really emotional in this moment.
Yeah.
To be here, to be with this family, to be with you, Kirk, and we don't know when we get another minute. We don't know when we get another hour, another day. And you have been an incredible resource in my life and given freely from just for hours of your time. And it's so, I can't express the gratitude that I feel. And it's the same for so many people that are here, but I just what's coming through right now is what happened the other day with you and Kira. And
Mm.
we just never know. And God decided to give you another day, and I want to say thank you to him for giving me the opportunity to just share with you how much you mean to me in my life. You've made me a better person, a better friend, a better wife. Without your counsel, I wouldn't be who I am today. And that goes for everyone that's here in this village. There's the countless hours that you've given to me, and I just love you so much. I don't know anywhere in the world that you can get a melting pot of people smashed together, and are able to experience life like this, you know, where we're completely open and vulnerable and sharing all of our parts. Not one gets hidden, like it's all there on the table for all of us to see and witness and appreciate and to love home, you know? And so, you said something really beautiful in the beginning of this, and it was being aware of what you don't know. And it's we get the opportunity of having so many eyes, you know, that are assisting each other on this journey together. And I think that is one of the most crucial things that we can do is put ourselves in an environment where people see you and not see you for you to make yourself feel better or anything or to do what you want them to do. It's no, to have them realize who they actually are, you know, and to see them for who they are and be loved for who they are, just for being themselves, you know, and who God created them to be. And that when something's not in alignment, you're like, hey, no, that's not really, that's not you. Get that off. That's a program, you know? And so thank you for sharing that. And there's so much that I still don't effing know.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And there was also this in the visionary leadership program, and it's you gave this distinction about filling a room with your presence, you know, and being aware of it, you know, like being aware of the good, the bad, the fugly, you know, like whatever it may be. But like how did you recognize your presence inside of the room? And how do you fill it now with your intention?
Yeah, this is like one of the most difficult things for me to distinguish. I noticed when I was trying to distinguish it in the classroom. I'm glad it impacted you. Uh, so it was given to me, you know, in previous training, this idea. But I really, it was hard to, I think it was hard to see. Oh yeah, there's a phrase that I heard when I was a young man that pissed me off, but I grew into it. And it was, I showed up, I was in construction at that time, and I showed up one day with some sunglasses. And my boss, who's also I was friends with, who's older, kind of like a father figure to me, kind of sarcastically comments, the shades don't make the man makes the shades. That pissed me off until I got it. You know, uh, you might wear sunglasses and think you look cool, but you just look like a fool with sunglasses until you wear the glasses, you know. And again, it's difficult to distinguish, but for me, it's like, oh, another little flash is, you know, when I was young and in my teenage years, not, you know, adolescence and almost, you know, growing to close to full grown, I was very meek and hungover, and you know, I was bullied quite a bit, uh, eh, you know, psychologically at home and physically out in the world at school and stuff. And so I was trying to not be seen and be charming and you know that kind of stuff. And so, you know, my shoulders were slumped and my neck was, you know, whatever you call that. You know, people walk around like this all the time. You know, and one day I just got it. Might have been nagging from my mother also was part of it, but one day I got it from myself that um, no, it's. I think that got connected a few years later with the man makes the shades. It's like, oh yeah, I need to learn how to actually stand up straight and hold my head up and put my shoulders back and look people in the eye. and speak with an intention to be heard. And it was really difficult because I would have that commitment. I was fired, and 5 minutes later, I'd be walking around like this, or something. Somebody would engage me, and I'd be looking away. It's taken me years to learn how to stand up straight, hold my head up, put my shoulders back, look people in the eye, and intend to be heard when I speak. and and so becoming a man, becoming an adult, becoming a leader, becoming a force to be reckoned with. And um, can I have the question again? I keep getting
Fill the
lost and
room.
inspired. What?
Fill the room.
Fill her up. Thank you. Uh, so later, as I'm being trained and developed to lead programs and stuff, um, that sort of like feels like the next extension of that, right? So I'm not just standing in my own power. Now it's like imagine a sphere. Okay, in my sphere, I'm going to stand up tall and learn how to be a man and learn how to speak and learn how to look people in the eye and stop being a wuss and stop being afraid of everything. Take the consequences that or whatever. Just okay. Well, if I did the deed, I'll pick up the tab. Whatever. Um, and then as I move into a more contributory environment where I'm learning to be a leader and actually be a contribution to a room full of 100 people or whatever, I noticed that when I was really inspired, like I did the work to just really be inspired and on point, aware, and like really ready for the thing I was going to lead. There's a whole process that I went through to distinguish inauthenticities in myself and create a way of being specifically for this event and create attention. And like it was this incredibly inspiring process for me. And I would, as I'm preparing to lead an event, I would just feel like my biggest and best me. Like just, oh my gosh, I didn't know I could be loved. Like I might create the way of being loving and generous for the evening. And it was just like filled me up and expanded me. And, I felt 10 feet tall and 10 years younger. And well, that wasn't a thing back then, but now, now it's a thing. I remember what it felt like 10 years ago. Anyway, and then I noticed I would walk into a room and in that space, like I noticed people would notice me from across the room. And I noticed something else. In the environment I was in, there's lots of different leaders. And I began to distinguish all leaders are not in any way, shape, or form the same. And most of them I was not impressed with. This is a theme in my life, by the way. But there were a few that I deemed to be like, these people are the real deal. And when I noticed when I was anywhere near these people, all of a sudden the very best would come out of me because I held them in such regard and respect that I was inspired to be my very best, to give them my best because my experience with them is they gave me their best, which really pulled out of me, okay, well, you know, I'm gonna, handle my shit and deal with my feelings and take responsibility at a whole other level so that I could give my best, right? Because that's what I felt like I received. And so at some point, I began to see myself as the people that I respected. And so I walked in and it was like, fill the room. Like, yes, I'll taking responsibility for all of it. I'm expanding my awareness to fill the four walls and the floor and ceiling of the space that I'm in. I'm expanding my intention. Like my intention just isn't in my sphere. Okay, around me we're going to have integrity. Well, yes, but except around me now it just got bigger. Around me we're going to operate from inspiration and love. But around me got from this to whatever. And so it's, over time, it's just become a natural thing. And it used to be in my early days, I could be invisible, like I could go into a party or a thing or a situation or something. I could just literally just kind of disappear and everybody would just walk by me. And just notice. But after this awareness, like I literally can't do that anymore. I walk into a room, and I'm not making a sound. I'm not, it's not, I don't, it's not something that I like necessarily, but I notice that my energy is such these days that it's not really very containable. It doesn't really shrink down. It's like it fills the room. So anyway, that's fill the room.
Um, I've noticed sometimes inside of the village that we can go into this like numbness, of correction, rather than, and like, or go to, yeah, they go to comfort. Like, oh, I'm gonna, go to my comfort zone rather than receive the correction. And so how can you be aware of the numbness that can come in?
Uh, what's coming through is to assume that's where you're coming from. Like, I don't assume that I'm being hurt fully. In fact, I'm rarely hurt fully. Like, oftentimes, what I'm saying, what I'm distinguishing is far deeper and far wider and far more um, relevant, you know, than I'm received, which is to be expected. If you take it out of, the work that we do and maybe have two musicians talking, and one's been a musician for a year and one's been a musician for 50 years, right? The person who's a musician for 50 years is going to say what they say. And the 1 year musician is going to hear what they hear, but it lacks the depth and importance and richness that the 50-year vet is probably present to, right? And so it is, so one filter is people are just not very good at receiving and listening. Yeah, generally speaking, people don't listen. Um, like literally, people don't listen. They're so engaged in their opinions, their voices out their head, their constant concern about threat and reputation. And is this going to make me feel my feelings, or is this going to hurt my reputation, or is this going to have some negative consequence for me? Like what's in it for me, or what could hurt me, and something like that. That's mostly what people are listening for, and survival listening, I call that. And very rarely are people listening, literally listening for the goal, listening for the fulfillment of the purpose of their life. Like if someone's speaking to you and you were listening for how is this going to assist me in fulfilling my covenant with God, that would be a very different kind of listening than, oh, is this going to hurt my feelings, or is this going to hurt my reputation, or am I in trouble? Like it's just a different space, So rarely is anyone received their intended as their message is intended. And then the more rich, deep, nuanced, subtle experience of the person creating the world to be received, probably even a smaller and smaller percentage is actually received. I got chastised once by one of our students, I guess. Oh, well, you're probably used to being hurt. Oh, you're used to having your intentions hurt. I said, really? I said, would you like to know what my experience is of how much I'm received, the way the way I'm intending to, what I'm intending to give? Because yeah, I was like, about 10, 15%. You know, on a really good day, if I'm completely inspired and dialed in, and I'm letting it rip, and it's all heart and all love, and just best practices and full inspiration and flow and everything when I'm leading. And people are like, laughing at the jokes and nodding at the important parts and raising their hand and all the things, that's probably about a 10% night. It's for sure not a 90% night.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's taken me a while to make peace with. But then, that's the awareness conversation, right? So then I can turn right around and have been at a meeting for 2 hours, and someone say, "Well, you remember we said this, right?" I'm like, "No, we didn't say that." And everybody, 30 people go, "No, Kirk, we totally said this." Like, oh, okay, well, no, I thought I was, so it's comes right back at me too.
I'm just fully aware of how much just the word that came to my mind was a wimp, because I'm sitting here being a little, like whiny person about some of the people not receiving me and all these
Yeah,
things. That's one of I think there's just something I have to go through. But there was this big question inside of me because a lot of people have used me to take themselves to hell, and I've
yeah,
been releasing my own feelings about that,
yeah,
and because that's not my intention. That's not, but that's
right.
what people are hearing in their, and it's okay. And I think it's a necessary part of the journey, I guess. But um I've been wondering how to, one, change my frequency of how someone can receive me, and then
Yeah,
there's
right.
and then there's also the one where I'm standing in, where if you're going to receive me, you're going to receive me or
I'm
not,
standing
and
where I'm
it's
standing.
not up to me. So how do
That's a
you work those out together?
I love fabulous question. I wish I had a fabulous answer. That's the art. That's the art of it. When to hold them, when to fold them, when to keep altering your transmission, your communication, so that's more easily to receive. It's more easy to receive. And when do you kind of like, hey, this is what there is to get. Come to me and come get it. Like when to hold them, and then the conversation is when to take no action, when to say nothing. So when to hold them, when to fold them, when to extend out to make it easier for people to receive, and when to stand still and let people start to practice coming to an uncomfortable awareness or uncomfortable communication. You know, and again, for me, it's all connected to how healed people are, how much they've been able to actually grow up into adults, fully functioning adults, and how much people actually choose to wake up or not, and where they are in that waking up process. So yeah, that's the artistry of it. That's the grace of it. I over the last few months, for sure, have really taken on um, a more graceful approach to that phenomenon and letting people receive what they receive. And that's not actually what I was saying, but that might be the perfect place for you to. That might be the step that's available today in the direction of what I'm pointing to, or that might be the extent of the awareness that's possible at this moment, given where you're at and what you're feeling and your experience of life and me and whatever, like that kind of thing. So ever more, my answer is more and more uh, grace, generosity, kindness, and every now and then, it's straight and unmoving and that kind of thing. And it is my belief that as leaders, we all have this different energy signature. We all have these different sort of uh, awarenesses and um, directions that we're particularly gifted at or have been given grace about or have developed ourselves in. I'm just here to let people receive from me what is good for them to receive from me, and it used to be that I felt a lot of responsibility. So, I was here pretty much at the beginning, and I had a very big role here as soon as I got here, 5 years or so ago with John. And so I really had this awareness that we were at the very beginning of something, and whichever direction we're leaning in as time goes on is going to have massive consequences, both positive and negative. So at the very beginning, I was hyper interactive when it looked to me like the thing was going off. And so that didn't make me very popular. And I was deeply committed to creating a foundation that would be sufficient for this mission survival and for at a minimum and thriving, hopefully, And so I really took it upon myself to be hyper aware and hypersensitive to the space, the culture, the politics, the the general the listening of the community. Like, one of the first things I introduced to the community was the distinction of integrity, and it was slow going. I did not preach from the pulpit. I just started modeling it. And, several months later, someone noticed, hey, I noticed Kirk's always on time. Okay, one little baby step.
Mm.
5 years later, integrity is like a core principle that we operate from here. But I've never preached it, you know. It's a distinction in the visionary program. I treat it like all other distinctions. But, you know, from the very beginning, I saw it was very important. My point is, as the community has grown and there's a leadership body where once there was none, now there's coherence and direction where once there was none. Now I've dialed way down my interventionism and my confronting and that kind of stuff because people kind of are a little bit I represent sort of authority and here, and so people are easily triggered by me, even if I'm just saying good morning. I can really literally I say good morning, I can feel people. So I just for myself where I'm at in my journey, where the mission at is in its journey. I've moved way in the direction of grace, patience, kindness, let the flower unfold. Sometimes people need to hit the brick wall. I don't need to get in front of them. Hit the brick wall and splat, and I'll be there to assist them in getting back up and dust, brushing the dust off if they would like that from me. And I'll definitely move massively in that direction in everything that I do with my leading and my coaching and my conduct in the meetings. And I prefer to be the last person to speak. I prefer to let someone else carry the ball, let someone else have the brilliant idea, and someone else say the thing, and that kind of thing, because that makes a stronger community. And frankly, it's a lot easier for me. I never liked being the the heavy authority figure, and perhaps it was dysfunctional, but I think it was. I still am of the opinion that it was necessary when it was.
Yeah. Well, there's so much to unpack in everything that you've said, but the biggest thing is like we're human beings, we're not human doings.
Yeah,
And you kept mentioning becoming and becoming. It's an embodiment. It's not just one thing to become aware of it. It's now putting it into action, putting it into
yeah,
form,
yeah.
but I've recognized on this journey, like with correction, with awareness, sometimes we're often beating ourselves up when we're coming into that. And we don't know what we don't know until we know, and so
And
it's
even
just,
then, it can be a little wobbly.
yeah, it's like it's okay, just get right back up, just don't do the same things over and over and over again,
Yeah,
expecting a different result. I'm aware of the phrase, a lot of people say it sometimes and not even aware of how stupid this phrase is, so stop it. But ignorance is bliss. And that is so untrue. I think that is like the worst statement ever.
well,
And you can feel my gut.
it might be short
The,
term bliss, long term hell.
the, and the reason being is because you're literally living in your own hell, in your own making, if you continue to stay ignorant to the impact that you have on this world. And guess what? That impact is not the negative side. That's actually your greatness. That's actually what you can actually contribute to this world. You're literally leaving your biggest self aside. I'm like, don't do that. Use awareness in your biggest, in your, as your biggest friend, as your biggest ally. And you can see yourself rise up in so many ways that you can never think imaginable. You are a child of God, and don't ever treat yourself anything less than that. And one of the greatest um, uh, leadership programs that have ever come across my path that gave me biggest awarenesses is the Visionary Leadership Program. Uh, Kirk is the founder of that, and just thank you for all the time, all the wisdom, all the falls, all the rises that you've gone through to give us that gold. Oh my goodness, that support is
Well, if
gonna
it
be.
was hard won, I tell you.
I'm telling you, you want this, you want to get in this. It is the greatest thing that you could ever do for yourself, because it unmasks you and it unleashes you into who you truly are. So that is going to be in the description box below, as well as other support links for you. Go ahead.
Will you include the link to the What the Funk playlist? I think it's relevant to the podcast. It's a whole new way to express our distinctions and our contribution to the world.
Yes. So if you just want to listen to this music, you can just bump and funk if you'd like, and so that playlist is going to be
Awesome.
the link for you. Thank you so
Please
much.
share.
Yes. And oh my goodness, just thank you for being here. Thank you for being on this podcast, for anybody that's listening. And yeah, awareness is key. Thank you, Kirk.
I appreciate you. You're super welcome.